Hello, Gamecock fans. I'm Spencer Ball.
And I'm JP Barry. Welcome back to Ball Don't Lie, SGTV's premier live sports show.
JP and I will be giving you our weekly insight every Friday.
This week on the show, we're talking MLB playoffs and college football.
We'll be honoring South Carolina's bye week by highlighting some lesser-known teams in the Palmetto State.
Also, be sure to stick around for week 2 of head-to-head pick'ems.
And without further ado, welcome to Ball Don't Lie.
Welcome to the Kennedy Greenhouse Studio.
I'm Spencer Ball.
And I'm JP Barry. When you get it all right, you can hear that, and it just flies out of Founders.
An 18-year-old phenom, G.G. Jackson, has really turned his play up a notch. I'm almost 2 years older than G.G. Jackson. He's doing things I couldn't even dream of doing.
They're the Golden Gamecocks. They're just so much fun to watch. What a historic year for them.
This is Ball Don't Lie.
Every MLB wildcard matchup ended in a sweep earlier this week, leaving us with 8 teams still in championship contention.
You know, I think that's not something everyone predicted, JP. 4 sweeps.
Yeah, I personally saw a couple of them go in 3, especially that Twins-Blue Jays series. Shout out to the Minnesota Twins, not only winning their first playoff game since 2004, winning their first postseason series since 2002. But the road doesn't get any easier for them. As you can see, they're taking on the defending World Series champion Houston Astros.
And the Astros is they're that team that nobody likes and they just linger. You can't get rid of them. And they're, for good reason. They're really talented. They grow a good farm system. And good bats throughout the order.
Absolutely, but you know, this year it was a little bit of a struggle. They spent just a little over a week in terms of games played in first place. The pitching kind of struggled throughout the year. The lineup is eternal. I mean, it was mostly just, is Yordan Alvarez going to stay healthy and really bolster it to be the best it can be? And he managed to stay healthy for a lot of the year. But I am interested to see how Houston's pitching staff attacks a Twins lineup that not only got on base amongst the best teams in the American League, but tied for the most home runs hit with our other team in the ALDS, the Texas Rangers.
And the Rangers looked dominant over the Tampa Bay Rays. Jordan Montgomery, Gamecock legend, incredible 7-inning scoreless in that first game. And then in the second game, those bats just came alive. Top of the lineup is just so dominant with Marcus Semien and Corey Seager. Shout out Corey Seager, went to my high school. Just how random is that? And but the team they're playing, JP, at the beginning of the year, if anyone told you the Baltimore Orioles were going to win the AL East and be the American League 1 seed, I mean, that's crazy.
I mean, just 2 years removed from losing over 110 games, the Orioles have posted a 101 win season, and it's off the back of their tremendous farm system. And it says a lot about how great they are at drafting and developing that they've called up all these guys, and they still have one of the premier farm leagues in Major League Baseball. But the big question, I think, for the Orioles, I mean, the lineup is proven. Like, you know how good they are. It's how they're going to attack the postseason for the first time in most of their careers. And then how is the starting pitching going to hold up? Kyle Bradish has been outstanding for them. He's been one of the best starters in all of the American League. But he's really the only one. A lot of their other starters hovering about a high 3, low 4 in terms of ERA. And the bullpen, which was fantastic for them all season, took a big loss with Felix Bautista's injury.
Yeah, really tragic for them as one of the best closers in the league. Had to go out and get surgery, might be out some of next season. It's a really tough loss and at a really bad time. But this lineup does have the power to keep them in games, no matter who's on the mound.
Absolutely, and you know they're still going to be able to turn it to Ynier Cano in the back end of that bullpen and really shut it down. He has some wicked stuff, and you know when you have Adley Rutschman behind the dish, signaling, they have one of the best catcher tandems in terms of not just offensive skill, but defensive as well. And I'm really excited for the ALDS because all these teams, they're new, Like, the Twins haven't been this far into the postseason. Well, they've been to the ALDS, but they haven't won a series to get there.
Haven't won a single game.
Yeah, in so long. The Astros are that, stand alone, like, we knew they'd be here. But they went only 90 and 72 during the regular season. The Rangers won their first playoff series since the 2011 ALCS, and they're playing the Orioles, who haven't been in the postseason since 2014. So a lot of new blood in the American League. However, in the National League, it's a little bit different, with the exception of one. The Arizona Diamondbacks, winners of that wild card series against Milwaukee.
Looked really solid against the Brewers. I expected the Brewers to kind of put up more of a fight, but in that second game, they just couldn't hang on. And it was the kind of the defensive plays, some of the base running from the Diamondbacks in that first game that got it done as they edged out a close one.
Absolutely. I mean, the 38-year-old Evan Longoria with some of the most tremendous plays you've seen to really kill some rallies for the Brewers. The Brewers just it's what happens to them every year. They go into the postseason with an elite pitching staff, and then all of a sudden you give up a home run and you're down 2 runs, and it feels insurmountable because your lineup is terrible. They had 3 bats that were significantly above league average. You had Christian Yelich, who had a great bounce back year, happy for him. You had William Contreras, who you got in that 3-team trade with the Braves and the A's, who was very good. Then you had 50 games of Mark Canha, who had a 120 OPS plus in Milwaukee. Outside of that, you're just god-awful offensively, and you can't expect to win in October by winning every game 1-0, 2-0. And so when the Diamondbacks would go up like 5-2 or 5-3 off the back of some of these tremendous home runs by Corbin Carroll and Ketel Marte and Gamecock legend Christian Walker, it was insurmountable. And the back end of the Diamondbacks bullpen, which was a big question mark, I think, for them all year long, stood up when it mattered most. Their midseason trade acquisition, Paul Sewald, did a great job for them. And they're going to have their hands full with their in-division rival, the Los Angeles Dodgers.
And I feel like the Dodgers kind of flew under the radar this year, had an amazing season, but it's like less people were talking about them because it's kind of a given the Dodgers are always going to have a great season. They've got a massive payroll, so much talent, and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman are probably going to finish 2nd and 3rd in NL MVP voting. But that does bring us to our next series, and let's take a closer look at the South's premier baseball team and the World Series favorite, the Atlanta Braves. And I know JP is just chomping at the bit to talk about this, so we'll talk about them and then a little bit about their matchup against the Phillies.
Absolutely. So the Braves won 104 games, their most in a season since 1998, winning their 6th straight NL East crown, their 23rd overall division title, most in all of Major League Baseball. And they were doing it via the long ball. The Braves smacked 307 home runs over the course of the season, tied for first all-time with the 2019 Minnesota Twins. They led the National League in hits, batting average, on-base percentage, and slugging, one of the best offenses of all time. They had the best team OPS plus of any team ever, barely edging out the 2017 Houston Astros. But a little bit of a competitive advantage there. And a lot of it came from the leadoff spot with Ronald Acuna Jr. putting up 41 home runs, 106 RBI, and a 168 OPS plus. But he also put up 73 stolen bases, putting himself in territory never before seen in Major League Baseball.
And there's no signs of him slowing down, which is just, I'm sure it's music to your ears as a Braves fan. He is just so unstoppable, and that lineup is disgusting. And somehow they're just able to retain all their pieces. And then it seems like every trade acquisition they make just fits right in. It fits perfectly. And this offense is super balanced. Like Matt Olson has 54 home runs. And it's almost like if you took him out of the lineup, they'd still probably be the #1 seed in the National League. They're just that good. But they do have a tough task ahead of them, as last year they fell to the Phillies in the NLDS, and they get a rematch this year.
Yes, they do. And, last year they dealt with some of the same problems. They had pitching injuries with Spencer Strider. Max Fried had the flu. This year Strider is healthy, and he broke the Atlanta record with 281 strikeouts on the season. And he was tremendous against teams above 500, but really struggled against teams below 500 on the year. So we'll see which version of Spencer Strider we get in the postseason. You can argue that he got a little unlucky as he had a 2.85 FIP on the season, which is fielding independent pitching. But I think that the Braves have their work cut out for him. You saw Matt Olson, 54 home runs, 139 RBI, both Atlanta records. And outside of Acuna and Olson, they had 5 other players put up 20 or more home runs with Eddie Rosario, Sean Murphy, Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley, and the designated hitter Marcell Ozuna, all raking in the long ball for the Braves. But, you could see in these big games during the regular season when they played the Mets or the Dodgers, they could win in other ways, create havoc on the base pass, string together some singles, a bloop and a blast, walking. They're tremendous at drawing walks. But it's really going to come down to the pitching, and that's what it does always in October. As we saw the Braves in the 90s when they had tremendous pitching, could get anywhere. But Atlanta, starting-wise, Charlie Morton out for the NLDS. It's going to be interesting to see how they kind of maneuver that. They're going to have Spencer Strider and Max Fried, who was limited to just under 80 innings on the season due to injury. Bringing up perhaps Bryce Elder, who had a good season, struggled down the stretch, and who will start maybe the 4th game in that series. Will it be Kyle Wright, who missed almost the entire season, came back, worked out of the bullpen effectively a little bit? Or is it going to be someone like A.J. Smith-Shawver, some of the young guys, or Jared Schuster, who had their first taste of MLB action, had some great moments, had some kind of learning moments adjusting to Major League Baseball? It's just going to be interesting, and the one thing that can help them out is how tremendous the bullpen has been.
Absolutely. No matter who the starting pitcher is, though, they do have their hands full with the Phillies lineup that has a lot of pop. And the Phillies are just built for October. There's one of those teams where we saw it last year. I don't think anyone predicted the Phillies going to the World Series and making it very competitive. But yet again, they have a very similar lineup, and they have a lot of power. We saw, I mean, they just mopped the floor with the Marlins. And the long ball was a big factor in that. Bryson Stott hitting a grand slam in Game 2, and I mean, I saw the call with no announcers on it. And
how can you not be romantic about baseball?
How could you not? But that Citizens Bank Park, it gets rocking in October.
Yeah, two of the best atmospheres in all of baseball, and maybe just the American four pro sports with Truist Park and Citizens Bank Park. This Saturday, this NLDS is going to be special, and it's really going to come down, I think, to which starting pitching rises up, because you have two tremendous lineups, two of the best bullpens in the National League. The Phillies, by the way, what a great job they've done over the last couple of years strengthening that bullpen. Jose Alvarado, Craig Kimbrell have been outstanding for them, but it's going to come down to between Spencer Strider and Max Fried and Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, and then Bryce Elder and either Taijuan Walker or Kyle Wright and Anibal Sanchez. Like, who is going to step up huge in the rotation for the Phillies or the Braves? Who can go out there and get you 5 or 6 innings with 1 or 2 runs, turn the keys over to that tremendous bullpen and try and give your offense a chance to hang in there and win it? It's going to be a lot of fun. My nerves are going to be absolutely shredded, and we're going to hit a quick break, and afterwards we'll catch you up on South Carolina college football and the NCAA's ranked matchups. As the Gamecocks rest in the Midlands, Clemson looks to take their 15th straight win over ACC rival Wake Forest.
We've seen some close battles between the two in previous years, but 15 straight wins, that's something I didn't know before our little research session the last couple days. But Wake Forest does not look the same since Sam Hartman left.
Absolutely not. And even with Sam Hartman, Clemson, their defense is able to just absolutely feast on Wake Forest's kind of slow mesh point offense where the quarterback and the running back kind of walk forward with the football before you pull it and make a quick read. And the talent and ferocity of Clemson's defense has been able to just completely destroy them. They've notched 21 sacks in the last 5 meetings between the two, with countless tackles for loss and big hits delivered. And so even with Sam Hartman, Wake Forest struggled in this. And without him, as we saw last time out, they lost 30-16 at home to Georgia Tech in their ACC opener. The defense has been good for Wake Forest, though, a little bit. They've been good at wreaking havoc, as you can see, a 4.3 interception percentage and a 11.43 sack percentage. Clemson's offensive line, which has looked better in recent weeks, wouldn't you say, Spencer, is going to have their hands full?
They have, and they've really proved it last week against Syracuse, winning 31-14 in a game that seemed pretty close at the half, pulled away in the second half, and it was really their defense that made the adjustment. And, well, the key to their offense, in my opinion, is keeping hold of the ball. If they don't turn the ball over, their defense can go make plays. They can keep it on the ground. That's a really good football team, and they proved it last week. And that was a good Syracuse team. That was an undefeated Syracuse team, as we talked about. And now they host Wake Forest, a team that they should be able to dominate on both sides of the offensive line. As you saw last week against Syracuse, 5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, and 3 forced turnovers. It was a really good performance by the Clemson defense, and it's something we could probably expect again this Saturday.
Absolutely. They get after it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And, 3:30 on the ACC Network. It's a nice weekend of college football, but I don't know if Clemson fans are going to have much to stress about. They might be able to enjoy some of the other games this weekend.
I think so. It's just not the Wake Forest team where we're kind of used to seeing, well, surprisingly used to seeing, if you told me like 10 years ago Wake Forest would be good at football again. It is a really good job they've done with Jeff Clawson at the helm out in Winston-Salem. But now that we've talked about the Tigers, JP, we'd be foolish not to mention all the other football matchups in the great state of South Carolina.
Absolutely. South Carolina this week, it's a very interesting state right now. As you can see in the NCAA, South Carolina schools are combined 32-40 in 2023. We do have 2 ranked teams, however, in the football championship subdivision and Division II levels.
We sure do. As Furman, we saw them take on South Carolina at Williams-Brice Stadium earlier in the season, and they looked really good, especially in that first half. And it's no surprise they're ranked, as they really do just have a solid team, and being even able to hang with an FBS team, an SEC team in a first half is an accomplishment in its own.
Absolutely, and the upstate looks quite crowded in terms of college football teams, but it hasn't been crowded with quality football. Wofford 0-5, North Greenville sitting at a solid 2-3, Presbyterian 2-2. But, the Midlands, South Carolina, struggling a little bit. But Benedict, number 11 in the country, undefeated. They go on the road to Miles College. That should be a fun little matchup there. Wofford and the Citadel both looking for their first wins of the season. Citadel has their work cut out for them in a massive SoCon rivalry game. Wofford hosting their SoCon rivals as well. I'm interested to see, however, how Allen looks. Allen undefeated but lost last week. How are they going to bounce back from that tough loss here against Clark Atlanta?
And I've seen a couple of Allen games, and they're a really solid team. They have just a slew of offensive talent. I've seen them use like 3 or 4 running backs in one game. They can sling the ball pretty well, but their defense is also really good against the pass. They have a lot of good defensive backs, and it's hard for any team to do anything in the air against them. So it's interesting to see how the Yellow Jackets will fare, especially coming after their first loss of the season. But one thing I love about both Allen and Benedict, JP, have you ever seen their bands perform?
I have indeed, and it sure is a treat. I'm very excited to eventually one day get to one of their games here in Columbia. It's going to be interesting to see, I think, how some of these teams on the bye week treat themselves. You have Coastal Carolina, Charleston Southern, and South Carolina all on bye weeks this week. We're hitting the midpoint of the season. Guys are kind of weary. They're getting worn down by the grind. I think this is a nice bye placement by them. And some of these other schools in action now, they're going to get some rest here soon. But outside of the Palmetto State, college football has a slew of ranked teams playing this weekend.
They sure do. Prove It Saturday. I mean, what a title, because it is a Prove It Saturday for a lot of historic blue blood teams on this list, like Alabama. Hosting A&M, and if they lose this game, JP, it's a hard reality they see themselves in, pretty much being eliminated from playoff contention.
Absolutely. I mean, Alabama hasn't suffered 2 losses this early in the season in quite some time. Texas A&M, however, struggling with injuries, struggling with looking like a good football team. I don't really know if Alabama is going to lose, but I could see them being challenged a little bit. The game I'm really excited for, noon ESPN matchup between Mizzou and LSU. The Tigers are undefeated, and the Tigers are 3-2. But 2 of the best offenses in all of college football, Brady Cook leading Mizzou and Jaden Daniels leading LSU. But LSU's defense struggled heavily last week in their 55-49 loss to Ole Miss. How are they going to bounce back against one of the best offenses, not just in the SEC, but in all of college football? This very well could be one of the best shootouts we'll see all year. And it feels like every time Mizzou and LSU play, we get some weird game like that.
It is a weird thing to see Mizzou higher ranked than LSU, too. It's definitely been a while. But LSU not only struggled against Ole Miss, they struggled against Arkansas. And Mizzou's a team with a mobile quarterback similar to Arkansas, as Brady Cook is pretty solid on his feet as well, and he also hasn't thrown an interception in quite some time. He's got almost 1,500 yards already on the season, and Luther Burden is just incredible at the wide receiver position. He has almost 650 receiving yards, and it seems like he's just the guy they're finding. Every time you look up, it's like, oh, there goes that number 3.
Yeah, absolutely. The 5-star had a little up and down true freshman season and is really establishing himself here in his sophomore campaign. As we look at another noon matchup, as number 4, Ohio State, off a bye week after their big win against Notre Dame, hosting Maryland. The undefeated Terrapins 5-0 for the first time since 2001. Taulia Tagovailoa and company looking for their first top 5 win since 2004. And get this, since joining the Big Ten in 2014, Maryland has not defeated a ranked opponent in conference play.
Yeah, that's a wild statistic, and they are really going to have their hands full this weekend. As Ohio State, we saw them, sorry, JP, but they did have a really solid win against Notre Dame a few weeks ago, and they looked really surprisingly good defensively, and I feel like a lot of Ohio State teams don't get remembered for their defensive ability, but this team really showed up at College Game Day, but it was their offense that's probably going to be talked about in this matchup against the Terrapins, as it's going to be a nightmare day for Maryland defensive backs.
Absolutely, and then our 2 nightcap games, you have number 1 Georgia playing host to number 20 Kentucky. The Wildcats coming off of a big blowout win over their hated rival Florida. Ray Davis, one of the best tailbacks in all of college football, posting over 600 yards on the season.
And almost 300 in that game. He was unstoppable. There was at one point, it's like I turned on the TV, he has 11 rushes for like 220 yards. I was like, oh my goodness, that is never what you want to see if you're a fan of, good defense. But if you're a fan of a rushing attack, keep your eyes on this guy.
Absolutely. And Georgia, so far this year, they've always come out of the gates a little bit slow. They had to come from behind in the 4th quarter to get out a win against Auburn last week on the road. They returned to the friendly confines of Athens. I feel like every year Kentucky is like, yeah, this is the year that they get this big upset win, in Mark Stoops' signature win of his tenure as the Wildcats head coach. And I don't know if I can see it happening this weekend, but Kentucky's setting themselves up solid. And then another team from the Bluegrass State, Louisville, playing host to number 10 Notre Dame, 7:30 on ABC. Jeff Brom in his first year as the Cardinals, undefeated, but a little bit untested. They came out unscathed against NC State in a close 13-10 game, but the competition really ramps up for the Cardinals this weekend, doesn't it, Spencer?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely no shade to NC State, but they just aren't Notre Dame. They aren't Notre Dame, and I think the Fighting Irish look like one of the best teams in the country still, despite their one loss. It's not a bad loss at all, and I think they should be able to handle the Cardinals, and it's just going to be hard size-wise, I think, for Louisville to match up against Big Joe Alt and that offensive line. And then on the defensive line, protecting your quarterback, Jack Plummer, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, Notre Dame's defense has faced Plummer 2 seasons in a row. He was at Purdue in 2021 and Cal last season, so a little bit of familiarity there. I'm interested to see how much the season has kind of worn on Notre Dame. They played that Week 0 game in Navy. They haven't had a bye week yet, so they've played 6 games. And this is their 3rd straight ranked opponent in a stretch of playing 4 straight ranked teams, and it's their 2nd straight road game. It could be interesting how Notre Dame responds to that. Marcus Freeman's teams have had no problem responding, but this could be a pretty good game. It could be one that starts out a little slow, though.
It sure could, but although this might be a pretty good game, JP, the game I'm looking forward to the most has got to be the Texas Longhorns going up against number 12 Oklahoma, and this should be a barn burner.
Absolutely. I mean, they're always playing at the State Fair in Texas, at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. I'm super excited. These are 2 of the best teams in all of college football. 2 of the most exciting offenses. You have Dylan Gabriel versus Quinn Ewers. 2 players are in the top 6 of Heisman odds right now. They have a combined 34 total touchdowns and almost 3,000 yards passing between the 2 of them. And it doesn't stop there. They have tremendous backfields behind them. I mean, this is the highest ranked matchup for this rivalry since 2011 when Oklahoma massacred the Longhorns. But it's the 43rd overall meeting with both teams in the top 25, and you just don't really see that much.
It just speaks to the consistencies of both of these programs, and especially with Texas kind of having a down couple years, it's great to see them back. I mean, it really is, because it just makes football more exciting, I think. Because now you've got a top 15 matchup. If Oklahoma had played, I think, some more quality opponents, they'd be in that top 10, because I think they're just that good. But as you mentioned, both quarterbacks just uncorking the ball, it seems, every single game. You check the stat line, and it's like, wow, we've got 600 yards, it feels like. And for Texas, I think the key to the game is going to be Jonathan Brooks, a really, really good running back. He's got almost 7 yards per carry and over 600 yards already. And it feels like he's kind of overshadowed, by this passing offense. But he's just a really, really good running back. And even Texas defense shows up.
Absolutely. And, for a long time, since like the late 2000s, the joke has been about how bad Oklahoma's defense is. This year, they're on a little bit of the mend. Brent Venables really doing a nice job there. As you can see, they're led by their linebackers especially. They force a lot of havoc plays. They get after the quarterback. It's going to be interesting to see how Texas's offensive line, they were able to protect Ewers a lot against Alabama, so you'd think maybe they won't have much trouble, but rivalry games are always different. I'm just really excited. I'm glad this is noon. This is one of those games that should always be played at noon. It's got the pomp. It's got the circumstance. It's got college game day in attendance. I'm getting excited just thinking about it. I love college football, man.
I know I am, and this is one of those games, as a fan, you feel like you circle on your calendar. It's one of the rivalry games that doesn't happen at the end of the year. It happens dab smack in the middle, and it's great for all of us, isn't it?
Absolutely. This is the first time both teams have met undefeated since that 2011 season, so it's 2 teams that had down years last year. They've had down years a little bit in the last decade, and now they're both getting this huge curtain call. They're leaving the Big 12. I don't like that. I've made my opinion well known on the whole conference realignment sphere, but it's a curtain call for 2 of the best programs and one of the best conferences in all of America, and I'm excited.
Hey, let's hope they do it right, huh? And that's all we've got for you today. We'll be right back after the break with this week's Pick'ems to wrap up another episode of Ball Don't Lie.
Welcome back to Week 2 of BDL Pick'ems. After last week, I'm currently 6-0 on the season, while Spencer sits at 3-3. I'm excited, man. This is a weekend, I feel like it's a little underrated. There's the one huge matchup we just talked about, but there's a lot of little matchups. Starting with Texas versus Oklahoma. Spencer, who do you got?
Give me the horns, baby. Hook 'em. I think they get it done. They're too powerful offensively, and their defense really showed up against Alabama. They have that takeaway potential. Give me the Longhorns.
Absolutely. I think Texas, they're playing so great, but Oklahoma, man, they've been so awesome. Dylan Gabriel really proved himself after his long stints of injuries. But at the end of the day, I don't think it matters. Give me the horns, right. Hook 'em. Texas is back, folks. I'm really excited as we move over in the noon slate to Columbus, Ohio for what should be a kind of high-stakes shootout, at least for the first half, between Maryland and Ohio State.
Yeah, although Maryland has had a really solid start to the season, I don't necessarily believe that this will be close for more than a half. Give me the Buckeyes pretty comfortably.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot about how Maryland's offensive line can keep Taulia upright, and they've done a good job of that so far. But going from playing, Illinois and UConn and some of these schools to Ohio State's defensive line, which is looking like one of the best in all of college football, it's a little bit of a difference, a little bit of an uptick in difficulty. Give me the Buckeyes.
Now moving on to a little SEC play, we've got Mizzou and LSU. JP, who you got in this one?
Well, I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I'd be hammering the over in this one. I think that there's going to be a lot of lightning up and down the field up there in the other Columbia. It's going to be so much fun. Jane Daniels, Brady Cook might combine for over 1,000 yards passing in this game. I'm just giddy for excitement waiting for this one. But give me Mizzou. Give me the other Tigers as they move to 6-0 for the first time since 2013.
And I'm rocking with JP on this one. Give me also Mizzou as LSU's defense has looked really lackluster. I think this might be a staple Missouri win here.
Absolutely. And then our nightcap matchups, it's always the discussion. When is Kentucky going to get this next step big win? Is someone going to make Georgia pay for coming out and playing a lackadaisical every week in, week out in the first half? Can Kentucky do it this Saturday night in Athens?
I think they can. I have Kentucky circled, a big win against Florida last week, and they are going to have to improve on their play. They didn't necessarily finish out drives the best. Against Georgia, you're going to have to finish out drives, but Georgia has kind of escaped by the skin of their teeth here recently as they played a horrible first half against South Carolina, really got played really well against Auburn, and it was, if they don't have Brock Bowers, they lose that game. It comes down to that, but they do have Brock Bowers, so it's something to keep in mind. But Kentucky, I don't know. I got faith in Big Blue. Let's get it done, Kentucky.
I think it's going to come down to, can Devin Leary step up? He was tremendous at NC State, got hurt, transfers to Kentucky, and he's looked rather pedestrian so far. Big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games. This is a big-time game for the Wildcats. Is Devin Leary a big-time player? No, he is not. Give me the Bulldogs. Getting a big statement win, showing people why they're still the team to beat in college football, why they're still the #1 team.
I had to spice it up. We couldn't all have the same picks for everyone. But I do think Kentucky will at least keep it close. And for the final game of BDL Pick'ems, arguably the greatest segment in all of TV, Louisville and Notre Dame. JP, who you got in this one? Unbiased Notre Dame fan take.
Well, I think people are going to be looking at it and saying, Notre Dame's looking ahead to Southern Cal. Notre Dame's still reeling from losing to Ohio State, not looking that sharp offensively against Duke. And at the end of the day, it's all about how you can shake down the thunder and wake up the echoes. Even when you're on the road, those golden domes are shining. God's eyes are smiling upon his fighting Irish, and I think Notre Dame gets a big win as they look ahead with the college football world descending upon South Bend as they're going to take on the Trojans next week.
I don't have that much oomph to give the Fighting Irish. I think they should just beat Louisville pretty handily. But that's going to do it for this episode of Ball Don't Lie. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at SGTV at USC.
To keep up with all of our content, be sure to also visit us online at sgtv@usc.com. For SGTV Sports, I'm JP Barry.
And I'm Spencer Ball. From all of us here at SGTV, have a great weekend, Carolina.
Forever to thee.